Thank you for being here, David. And I'm very interesting to get to know my real enemy.
Ooh, thank you for inviting me. All right, so this one is gonna be in English, but I can say a few words in German. Hallo zusammen, wie geht es euch? And as we just talked, we are gonna explore the real enemy. Who is this guy? So now I'm sharing already the presentation. All right. So the question here is, how do you defeat the real enemy? And then you can win in the digital product. So before I start picturing the real enemy and empowering you to defeat it, I need to talk a little bit to you. So let's start our conversation by looking at two words here in product management: expectations and reality. And I started this adventure 15 years ago. And if there's something that I learned about working with digital products, is the following: expectations go here, reality goes there. Let me give you three perspectives from my journey. Everything started in 2008 when I got my first gig, so to say, as a software engineer. And the truth is, it didn't take long for me to get a nickname, Mr. Y. What happened was, day in, day out, I would get the list of requirements I had to fulfill, but I had no idea what they were for. And yet, I had to deliver on these crazy requirements. So I kept asking questions, and I kept getting no answers. When I got something that was pretty unconvincing, for example, the boss of my boss wants, or because sales promised that to a customer, or the classic, it is in the roadmap, we have to deliver it. So that was the story of my life, you know, creating something that nobody cared and I didn't know why. But in 2012, something was about to change. Life can be quite surprising. I got a chance of having my first assignment as the product owner. And I was told that I would be the CEO of the product. And I was quite excited about one particular aspect. I would be able to give software engineers and product designers problems to solve. And together, we would come up with valuable solutions. At least I thought so. And what I realized actually, once you join a company, there's something called stakeholder management. That's part of the gig of being a product owner. You have to talk to a lot of people. And almost all stakeholders would tell me precisely what they wanted, and only a few would tell me why they need it. And it turns out that the wants from business stakeholders are not always aligned with the needs from the customers. So what happened is, without further notice, I was demoted, and I realized actually I was not a product owner at all. I was a backlog manager. And life can be surprising. 2016, I got the chance of being the head of products of a startup. And I got particularly excited about one aspect. At this time, I would be the one giving the answers. At least I thought so. I thought I would be able to craft the roadmaps, outcome oriented, and let the team figure out which problems to solve and come up with solutions. But then there's something I encountered, and what I called is the corporate firewall. As a head of product, I had to deal with pressure from everyone wanting prescriptive timelines, very precise roadmaps, feature oriented. I realized that my real job was to protect the team from all the things coming around and distracting. So I had to fight the corporate firewall because once I found that in front of me, it blocked me. I couldn't move forward. And today, after all of these years in this journey, doing digital products in different places. I know that product management is pretty hard, and it's very easy to end up in a situation doing anything but product management. Almost everyone around you is going to push you in different directions, and only a few people will support you on doing what you should be doing. So it's tricky, it's very tricky. And then in the end of the day, you might be doing something that is totally unrelated to digital product management. And then I have a question for you. Are you doing product management or, like me, bullshit management? But today I'm not here to make you feel powerless. The enemy is this one, bullshit management. Because bullshit management is what distracts you from doing what matters, from creating value. But the reason I'm here is not to rant and rave. I am here to picture the enemy as vividly as possible and to equip you to defeat it. So let's start defining what a heck bullshit management is. Very simple. It's an art of spending time doing things that brings no value but drain your energy. And there's an equation behind it, The more bullshit you handle, the less value you create. Because there's only 2 hours a day that we are working, and if we are taking all of our time handling bullshit, then we have no time to do what really matters. Let me give you a few examples. Before I jump into what that is, let's picture a company here. And if you're part of a bigger organization, just imagine that this is a unit inside the company. All companies, they will have teams, many teams. There will be management at some place that they will ensure that the team has a direction to go, customer service to talk to the ones paying the bills and ensure that they are satisfied, marketing to get the word out, operations to ensure that your product is running as expected, your business model, and so on. And at some part, there will be the product teams. And pay very close attention because product teams come with different labels. It might be called Scrum team. They also might be called the tech team or the dev team. But these are the ones getting the things done. And now comes something quite interesting. All teams here have something in common. You may think it's about people. Yeah, they have people in common, but there's something else they have in common. All of them have the most brilliant ideas in the world. At least they think so. And the challenge comes on, what do you do with all of these ideas? The most probable answer is to put all of them mindlessly inside the product backlog. You just put them inside the product backlog. Oh, there's an idea here. Let's put in the product backlog. Let's put another one and so on. And the product team or Scrum team or whatever you call in your scenario will have to interact with all of these other teams to manage the situation. That's reality. And the big question is, how should you handle the situation? There's different ways of doing that. And some will increase the odds of creating value, and others will let you trapped in the middle of bullshit. Let me give you the two ways I know. And we're going to start with the most common one, which is quite dangerous. I call it as the coordinative development flow. You are working on coordinative development flow when you have a lot of handovers. And if something goes wrong, you know who to blame. And also, this one is the one getting you super tired because you are all the time in meeting. You're trying to get someone on board, trying to coordinate activities, and so on and so on. How does that work? The beginning is the same. There are a lot of ideas. But in a coordinative development flow, you want to pick the most promising idea. There's a big chance here that you have a lot of prioritization frameworks and some complex with scoring, for example. You might be using Rice, Mice, or all of these other guys here to find the idea that will increase the odds of delivering something outstanding. It might take several days, if not weeks, to choose this idea. But eventually, you find that idea that you believe is the right one. And then product designers with product managers, and without software engineers, we start working on this. They start interacting with business stakeholders, crafting a prototype, a high fidelity one, and stakeholders give feedback here and feedback there, and pay very close attention. This is an inside out approach. At this stage, no customer is involved, but the designer needs to ensure that the prototype has the right tonality of blue, the yellow is yellow enough, and the buttons are rounded to the taste of the business stakeholders. And once you have that as the stakeholders approve, you can move on. Then you go to the user test. At this stage, you don't even remember what that idea is for, but you know you have to validate your idea with your audience. So you start, you know, testing with your audience. But you are already biased. You may have fallen in love with the idea. You are not so open to drop the idea anymore because you are all in. So you may confirm all of your bias and you realize that maybe you need to change a text here, change a call to action there, or something like this. But you are unwilling to drop the solution altogether because you are fully invested in this. Took a lot of time to design it and get approved from stakeholders. And once you confirm the user test, you throw over the fence to software engineers. And at this stage, software engineers are not software engineers anymore. They are not creating scalable and maintainable solutions. They are coding. They are demoted to coders because they have to implement whatever they are told to do. They won't like it. There will be a fight between product designers, software engineers, and product manager will be the mediators. You need to ensure, that this fight will be over and software engineers will code. And there will be compromise. That will be the only way to fit the tight deadline, cutting corners. What the design created is not what's going to be delivered, but eventually, after weeks or months of work, you get that live. Put all of your blood and soul there. And guess what happens? You're going to have the most beautiful and shiny piece of crap ever created. And you will be unwilling to remove that from the product. Big chance what's going to happen next is just go back and do all over the same again, hoping that you are going to find the most promising idea. But reality is this. Before you find the promising idea, you are going to create a lot of useless features. In a coordinative development flow, the question teams spend a lot of time with is, how can we accelerate delivery? This question has some value in it, but I don't think it's the one that will change the game for you. Why am I saying that? Let's face reality here. 9 out of 10 ideas will fail. You don't need to take my word on that. Just do a quick research. What happens with startups? Search for the success rate. 10% will make it. Out of all the startups created right now, 90% of them won't last more than 5 years. They will just disappear. And startups are made of ideas. And they are fragile. Not all ideas are good. And what happens when startups start being scale-ups and then eventually become an enterprise? We tend to forget that our ideas, they don't always work. And we go all in. Let me give you just some numbers. Netflix has a success rate of 8%. So it means that plenty of ideas fail, even more than 9. Google has somewhere between 12 to 15% of success rate, and so on, and so on. So if 9 out of 10 ideas fail, asking the question, how can we accelerate delivery, is not something that is going to help us. What will help us is asking this question: how fast do you drop the bad ideas? Because you need to find them as fast as possible so you can thrive. That's the magic. But then it comes the enemy. How do you do that when bullshit management is all over the place? So let me help you understand 7 common traps, 7 signs that you are trapped into bullshit management and that is blocking you from doing product management. The very first one I like picturing is this guy here, the waiter. So let's step back from product management for a while now. Let's suppose we're going to a restaurant. Let's say you are up for a burger. You arrive in the restaurant, the waiter comes to you and say, "What would you like to eat?" And then you say, "I'd like this special burger today. I'm starving." Then you look there what the burger has and you tell the waiter, "But I don't like pickles. Please remove the pickle." The waiter is going to take note. Yeah, okay, so you want a special burger without pickles. And the waiter say, "Would you take some French fries, maybe some sweet potatoes? They go well together." You say, "Yeah, I would go with that. Anything to drink?" Then you say, "I'm gonna go with a Coke, a small one." Or in Germany, "I'm gonna go with a Spezi." So let's take that. The waiter takes the order, walks to the kitchen, and pow, hang on the wall and expects the kitchen to cook it. How similar is that to product management? If you would ask me that in 2012, I would tell you the following. I thought that my job was about gathering requirements from stakeholders. I would walk to them and say, "What are the requirements?" And then I would try rephrasing, and then I would understand, and I would make suggestions on top of that. And then I would take notes and so on. And then I would, instead of hanging on the wall, I would put in the backlog and expect the software engineers to deliver that. And if the stakeholders were lucky, the software engineers would deliver as expected. As a customer in the restaurant, if you're lucky, you are going to get your burger without the pickles. But not always that's going to happen. But what is the problem here? The waiter didn't care if you actually should be eating the burger. That's what you want, which might not be what you need. What if you have a high cholesterol? What if you are diabetic and you should not be drinking Coke? Waiter couldn't care less about it. It's not the waiter's job to define that. But the product manager job is to understand the needs beyond the wants. Because as I said, the wants from business stakeholders don't always match the needs from customers. Be careful with the waiter anti-pattern. That is one of the problems. What about the product backlog? How big is this kid for you? Let me give you a story. Got a new job as a product manager. It's a true story. My manager told me, "Your first week, go through the backlog to get familiar with what we're doing." I opened the product backlog. I found 1,762 items. Yeah, you got it right. 1762 backlog items. Exactly that. So it was crazy. It was insane. This monstrous backlog. I started going through that kid and then I was trying to understand. I would go and talk to business stakeholders and say, "Yeah, that's nice to have. It's for later." I would look at the technical data. Software engineers would say, "Yeah, just keep in the backlog. Maybe we do that sometime, but not now." I would say, "But it's here for 2 years now." They would tell me, "Yeah, but it's for later. It's not for now." Then I would talk to a QA engineer, and the QA engineer would tell me, "Yeah, there's some bugs here, but they don't happen that often." I got tired of that. You know what I did? I said, "I'm gonna go wild here." Said, "I will remove everything that is untouched over the last 6 months." I removed more than 800 items. I'm not seeing you here right now, but I would ask you how many mails you think I got. I deleted the 800 items and we were working with Jira. So it means that 800 emails were sent. I got 2 emails back, 2 emails. And one came from a stakeholder saying, "I swear to God, I didn't write this nonsense. It was not my thing." I said, "All right, not a problem." And the other came from a QA. "Hey, this bug is already solved. Thanks for closing it." I said, "All right, I may be able to do it again." So I did again. and I remove everything untouched over the last 3 months. No email this time. Then I look at the backlog. It was more like a wish log. It had everything, but they weren't aligned to a goal. So I start cleaning it up, and the backlog became smaller. There were fewer items compared to that. There were around 80 or 90 items, and with that, I could work. So if you keep your extensive product backlog, just imagine that you are in the Autobahn driving forward, but you're looking backward. Big chance you're going to crash your car. What about consensus? You know, many people think that consensus is the best way of getting people on board with decision making. I think it's the worst way possible. It is slow, and you get the worst possible option that was not even on the table. Consensus means that everyone agrees and weigh their opinion. Consent is what you need. It means that we understand and we agree, although we may see differently, but we commit moving forward. Now let me give you a story. It's a real one, not about product management. A friend of mine was getting married, and we were going to the wedding. I was already dressed up. My wife was getting ready. She was wearing a gorgeous blue dress. And she came to me and said, "Hey, honey, what should I wear? High heels or flat shoes?" I said, "I don't know. What's the difference?" And she told me, "Well, high heels are fancy, they're more elegant. And flat shoes, they can be also fancy, but the ones I have here, they are more to the comfortable side." I said, "What is more important for you, being fancy or having comfort?" He said, "Well, I think comfort is more important." I said, "Here you go. You have your answer. Just go for that." She said, "Yeah, but fancy is nice." Then I thought, time for a joke. "Let me give you an option." I said, "What if you go fancy on one shoe and comfortable on the other? Then you will be fancy and comfortable." Just picture her walking, high heel on one and flat shoes on the other. She said, "Are you nuts? It makes no sense." I said, "Yeah, it makes no sense. So just pick one." So now let's go back to the product world. What happens? The designer and the product manager talk to the customer, you understand their pains and so on. And then you come back and the designer has made a prototype, test with the user, and then it happens that stakeholders want to weigh in, although they were not part of the evidence with the customer. Software engineers want to weigh in. Then it happens that weighing in becomes the rule that the designer has to adapt. I'm not saying that stakeholders shouldn't share their opinions, and neither that software engineers should not share, but I'm saying that evidence should talk louder than opinions, and the best option for the product should be the one to follow, not the loudest opinion. So be careful with consensus. Focus on progressing and finding the best option for the product. Now it will come a polemic one. You may not like what I'm about to say, but I would ask you if you have in your workflow something called PO approval or PM approval, just delete it and then we continue the conversation. Yes, go there and remove that from your workflow. I have been part of many teams that had the PO approval, and I was the PO approval there in this case. I had to sign off everything that software engineers would create. And you know what happened? Many things. First, Scrum has no hierarchy. It means everyone is on the same level. But if the product owner is approving tests from the team, then what is the sprint goal for? I thought the goal of the sprint was to reach the goal, not to deliver the test to the taste of the product owner. Now let me give you a real story. In one of the startups I worked, there was a PO approval there. I was still new to the role, but in the definitions of done, we had code review, QA, and we had also usability tests. So it would go through all of that. And then the king, which in this case was me, would look at this and say, I approve or I reject. And then I would reject, had to go back to all of these again and again. How does that sound collaboration? How does that sound same level? The truth is that I became a bottleneck and the team was not empowered. And I had to They care a lot about this. So funny enough, the moment I removed this PO approval, software engineers would ask me, hey, have a look, I'm working on this. What do you think about it? And then I would say what I think about it, and we would exchange. But it was a collaborative way and not a coordinative one. So be careful with the sign-offs. They won't help you get the job done. Oh, this one is polemic. Several meetings. Generally, when I do this live, I ask the participants to raise their hands if you have more than 20 hours a week of meetings. So just imagine that 20 hours a week, raise your hand. 25, keep that raised. 30, keep that raised. More than 30, quit your job. Yeah, seriously. More than 30 hours a meeting? No, that doesn't work. So let's go back prior to pandemic. When we used to work in the office, there was a physical limit. There were meeting rooms, and meeting rooms, well, there were only a number you could go. I worked in Germany for several companies already, and one of the companies had 10 floors, and there were 2 meeting rooms per floor, so we had 20 meeting rooms. So we had to be careful. The meeting rooms were very well booked, so we need to choose very well what to use for and who to attend, because the meetings, they had a space for max 7 people. It was designed for that. What about now? There's no limit anymore. You can have as many meetings as you want with as many people as you want. So the result is the following. There are many mindless meetings scheduled, meetings without goals, meetings that are unrelated to what you are trying to achieve, meeting with more people than necessary. But we still attend it to avoid pissing off some people. So this is another example of bullshit management. Be careful. Be mindful about the meetings you attend, because you are the driver of your agenda, not the passenger. And if you let someone else drive your train, you may not even know who the driver is or where it is taking you to. How often do you say no? Many people ask me, what is my definition of good product management? I say that the ability of saying no and keeping the relationship sustainable is what defines product management, good product management, because you can stay focused on what matters most. Now, let me give you my initial strategy. It was very simple, but didn't work. I would say no 3 times to every request I would get. And the fourth time, I would listen, because if the person would bother coming to me 4 times, it meant it was important. But the problem was I got too many complaints, and my boss told me, you need to stop being the business blocker. Then I stepped back. I said, all right, so actually, I need to help stakeholders say no to themselves. I started engaging in conversations. Instead of telling them, no, this is not important, I would ask them, how does this request relate to our strategy? How does this request get us closer to our most important goal at this moment? Pay attention to what I'm saying. Most important goal. I'm not saying several goals, because you should be pursuing one goal at a time. You need to do your homework to ask these questions. But I started asking. And then I would ask the important question: which evidence would you have supporting this? What does success look like? And then, if I'm saying yes to this, what can I say no to? Within such questions, stakeholders would reflect, step back, and then they would say, I get it. It's not for now. So let's not pursue it. And then we could move on. And the last one here is about explaining failures. The question you ask when something goes wrong will determine your future. So if you ask, how can we avoid this in the future? You have a team that is afraid of failing. You will avoid failure, but you are going to cripple your creativity potential. And by that, you won't be able to innovate anymore. So it's dangerous. Failures, they are just steps towards success. I know that That may sound cliche, but this is what happens. You need to fail several times before you can succeed. You remember the example we just had about the coordinative flow? So if you keep just following the same process there, it's not going to work. You need to learn. The magic is what you learn from failure. So instead of asking, how can you avoid this next time? You could ask, what would you learn from that? Another story for you. One of the startups I worked, the team noticed, actually the founders noticed, there was a taboo around failures and they wanted to change that. So they created an event which was called the Fuck Up Night. And the first day of the event, there were like a lot of people there, a DJ, some drinks and food. But the founder stood in front of everyone and said, the reason I'm here today is because I led 3 other startups to bankruptcy. And I learned my lesson. I learned that you need to start small and focus on a niche group before you target a bigger audience. That you need to grow your investment based on evidence, not on opinions. That you need to collect revenue as fast as possible to prove market fit. So he shared these 3 parts, very humble, and said, and I am here because I know we are going to fail, but I want to learn from you. Let's learn from each other. Who would like to share something? And then another PM went there and started sharing. And that's how it started, asking a different question about failures. So learn is the most important. As Ash Murray likes saying, your unfair advantage is your learning speed. So let's just refresh our memory here on the 7 traps. Remember, the first one, the waiter. The second one, 1,762 backlog items. Consensus is the third one. If you want to memorize that, just picture my wife, fancy and comfortable, walking. The approval process, the bottleneck. You don't want to be that. The meeting marathons, getting stuck in meetings that you couldn't care less about. Saying no is important. Better helping stakeholders say no to themselves and avoiding failures over learning. So these are the common traps, which we all want to defeat. So I hope now you have understood the real enemy. And I want to tell you that facing bullshit is unavoidable, but dealing with it and creating value is the art. And I want to empower you for that. So how do we overcome bullshit management and become able to do product management? Believe it or not, it is possible. And you remember, we started talking about a coordinative development flow. What if we go with a collaborative one? The beginning will be just the same. You have a lot of ideas and you need to decide what to do with them. So instead of trying to come up with all the fancy prioritization methods, let's go with this one. We are going to be pragmatic here. We are going to look at what matters most. You take all of your ideas and you start asking questions. How does this idea contribute to our vision? It doesn't. Get rid of it. How does this support our strategy? It doesn't. Get rid of it. How does this connect to our most promising goal right now? It doesn't. Get rid of it. So you keep doing that. And then you realize that many ideas are unrelated to what matters most right now. So you just get rid of them. And then you can move on. And this exercise should be around a few hours at best. And then you move to learn. And here you want to find the ideas that are desirable for your target audience, that you can build, meaning it is feasible, and also that gives value back to the business. It is viable. And beyond that, it is ethical. It means that you should do it. So you start testing these ones. And then you realize that customers don't really desire that, or that you cannot collect business value, or maybe you cannot even build it. For this part here, you are going to run quick experiments. We are talking about experiments that takes hours to days. It's not about weeks here. If you're running things that takes weeks, then it's wrong. These are fast things. Then you move on. Then you start running stronger experiments here. You start scaling up. For example, you may create Wizard of Oz, which is fake until you can make it. So it's kind of you create an interface, people can interact, but there's a strong operation behind it. Or you use a concierge method, you become the product. Or maybe you create a prototype or you create the initial version. Another way of doing that is you use technical debt to accelerate delivery. First, you build to learn, then to scale. So here you're trying to approach your solution with more audience, so a bigger audience to see if it stands through or not. But if you're doing this right, you will realize that some ideas, they just don't work. They don't deliver the value expected. Then you move on. You pay the technical debt off, you make your idea scalable and maintainable, and you go all in, roll out for 100% of your audience. Then you thrive. So this is the magic, separating bad ideas from good ones. You want to increase the size of your trash bin, not the size of your backlog. And this is what product discovery can help you. Product discovery done right helps you create value faster. Now let's talk about the backlog. You remember I said in 2012 I was hired to be the CEO of the product, and then I was demoted to to backlog manager. So here's what I did actually. Traditional backlog management is something big that you keep a kind of a wish log, old promise, new promise, nice to have. Everything goes in and barely anything goes out. But what if you do a lean backlog management? You take your big, massive backlog and then you separate like this, new and old. Of course, new and old depends on your learning speed. So you need to accelerate that. I realize that generally keeping items no longer there than 3 months is good, but it depends on your scenario. It can be even faster, maybe if, 6 weeks, something like that. But now it comes a trick. You know, I told you to increase the size of the trash bin, so it means you are gonna take the old items and trash them. It's not because you have unlimited space in your product backlog that you could keep that way. That's just distraction. If you want to get distracted, go for it. I don't think you want that. And then the second step of a lean backlog management is looking at your goal. And then you say, is this item contributing to the goal? No. Make the trash bin bigger. Is it contributing to the goal? Yes. So that remains in your backlog. So you don't want a traditional backlog management. You want a beautiful lean backlog management. Think like this. When you treat backlog items like wine, what you are going to create is confusion. I give you an example. I was working in e-commerce, and then a software engineer came back from holiday, and I had a massive backlog. I didn't have my strategy of lean backlog management back then. The software engineer asked me, what should I do right now? I said, hey, I need to figure that out. And then without asking me, the software engineer started working on something. It was about a newsletter. I started implementing. And then I noticed that and I asked her, like, why are you working on this? She said, well, this item was created before my maternity leave, means 2 years old. And I'm working on this. I know what it is about. I said, yeah, but one of our current goals is actually to reduce the newsletter frequency. And what you're doing right now is to create another newsletter. She said, yeah, but it's in the backlog. So it's your job to keep it correct. Yeah. So I realized that I was keeping backlog items like wine. The older they get, the better. But reality was the older they get, the worse. What if you treat them like milk? So once you open them, they have short longevity. You can throw them away after some time. So ensure that your backlog items age like milk, not wine, and the team will thank you for that. So keep like that. Keep the backlog clean. Backlog items age like milk, not like wine. Now to wrap up here, all that I have talked, I want to give you something. You're going to face reality that is going to shock you. But as I said, I don't want to leave you powerless. You can do some health checks and you can see which ingredients you have available to you. So look at your vision. How is that? Is that inspiring you? Does that bring purpose? What about your strategy? Does it smooth decision making? Objectives, are they measurable and meaningful? Let me tell you, measurable means focus on the outcome, not the output. If measure means delivering a feature by end of the quarter, that's a wrong measure. A measure would be delivering a result by the end of the quarter, and you can figure out which feature delivers that. What about product principles? I gave you an example. First, build to learn, then to scale. Do you have principles in your scenario? If not, set them. So do this health check with your team, business stakeholders, and then you look at them and say, what do we want to do different? And then you can start working on this. You don't need to change everything at once. You can go one by one, and gradually you can overcome the challenge. Let me give you another health check you can have. This is on the discovery level. So you look at your value proposition. How does that help you with decision making? You evaluate how you deal with customer interview. It's not only about the frequency, it's about how you learn from the interviews. Also, what about assumptions? Do you know them or not? What about testing assumptions? What about ideation? If you look at these and you say, oh gosh, I don't have any of that, I don't know where to start, I help you. Start with assumptions. Because even if you have a feature oriented roadmap, you can ask the question, what are we assuming on this feature? Maybe you say, we are assuming that customers will understand how to use it. We are assuming that this creates business value. Then you can say, what can we do right now to learn if this assumption is correct or not? Then you can try it out. So this is one thing that you can do because it's recognizing the cards you have and do the best move. Because if you play the game, then you can create some evidence that will give you the other cards. So if we start proving that the feature-oriented roadmap isn't helpful, then you can make a better one after. But you need to start somewhere. As I said, if everything here is absent, start with assumptions. Now looking at the delivery, I know that many product owners focus exclusively on the delivery. If that is your case, you're going to find chance to improve. Hopefully, it's not your case and you can also work on the strategy level. First thing you can look at is about strategy. If all the features you build, you are going all in from the beginning, it means you are over investing. You should adapt your investment based on your evidence. The weaker the smaller the investment. The stronger, the bigger the investment. Also, look at how often you measure results. Story points delivered by the end of the sprint, that's not the result that matters. What matters is what you create. And when was the last time you removed a feature? Because it's normal to retire features. Some of them become just distraction, so you retire them. How do you deal with failures? And how is your product backlog? So these are aspects that you can use to reflect on the status quo and identify points to make it better. And now I want to conclude the talk by giving you a choice. You always have a choice that you can make. You can indeed bow to the status quo, but you need to accept if you do that, you are going to get stuck. And that's it. So you make peace with however it is and you don't try changing. But you can challenge the status quo and have a chance of a better tomorrow. I cannot promise you you will have a better tomorrow, but I can tell you you have a better chance if you do something different. What is your choice? So thank you. That was the talk about the real enemy. I hope you got insights about it. We're going to have a Q&A right now. If you want to know more about me, you can find me on LinkedIn, Dave Pereira. I'm trying to transform the product world. I say that I'm doing my best to simplify product management. You can also join my newsletter for free, Untrapping Product Teams. You would find me in deepdata.substack.com. And I would like to give you an offer. So if you want to learn more about product management and you want to improve your discovery skills, meaning you are going to diminish waste and boost value, I have a cohort starting on the 21st of November. It will be 4 sessions of 2 hours hands-on. So if you want to join us, here it is. You have QR code and you have a voucher of 15%. So maybe I see you there. I hope you enjoy it.
Thank you very much, David.